Hello and welcome learners. We are excited to tell you that Indira Gandhi National Open University has launched MSc Physics degree in open and distance learning mode from July 2023. The degree is comparable with any MSc Physics degree offered by higher educational institutes across the country. Now let us look at the salient features of the program. The objective of the program is to impart high-quality education in physics, to equip the learners with core knowledge in physics, to provide adequate analytical and laboratory training for pursuing higher education or a career in physics research and development, to provide a focused insight into currently relevant branches of physics research through well-designed elective courses, to
Welcome to all. Everybody knows that curriculum development is a tedious task. But whatever curriculum we have developed, if it is not properly transacted, the curriculum will be a waste. So in today's session, we are going to discuss about curriculum transaction. And this transaction, we know that it takes place between two individuals or between one individual and a larger classroom. So in this context, we are going to discuss about the curriculum transaction. What are the basis of communication? How do we communicate with each other? When we look at the term curriculum, we know that it comprises of the total activities, the content, the syllabus, everything is included in the curriculum. So whatever we want to give to the learners or transact to the learners, not only the content, but the whole of the teaching learning process. In a teaching learning process, we know that we are not concentrated upon the content part or the mastery of the content. We are looking after the holistic perspective of the development of the learner. When we think of the holistic development of the learner, what is important is that there are three domains: cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domain. So whatever activities are coming under these three domains, it will come under the curriculum. Now we come to the term transaction. We know that we want to convey the content in a proper manner. So in curriculum transaction, we may sometimes hear about the term management of curriculum. So how a teacher or an adult learner, they have to manage the curriculum. In this context, it is very important to think about the steps in the curriculum transaction. The first important step, that is planning. What comes under planning? The planning, we are planning about the content that should be framed, how to include it, what are the basis of it. And after planning comes organizing. In organization of the curriculum, we know that there are different approaches that we can take. Like that, the spiral approach, the thematic approach. So now the important thing what we can see is the multidisciplinary approach. So this organizing of the curriculum is an important aspect. Then we can see that after organizing, we have to guiding is important, and then we have to transact it in a proper way. So these steps of curriculum transaction includes a lot, whereas we want to transact the curriculum in a proper manner. Now comes, what are the basis for the framing of the curriculum? That is an important thing. How do we frame? How do we select the theme, the content for curriculum transaction? For this, we can see that the philosophy of the nation is an important part of curriculum transaction. Every nation or every locality have a philosophy behind it. So this philosophical background is an important basis for curriculum transaction. Then comes the needs of the society. Always we have to look at a particular society. We cannot form a uniform curriculum because all the curriculum needs the localization of the context. So the contextualization of curriculum is an important part that we have to give importance. So the philosophy, the needs of the curriculum, then comes the needs of the learner. So what is the target group that we are going to take? So based on that, we can say in other words that the developmentally appropriate curriculum, the age appropriate curriculum. So we note that all the students, they are going to different stages and ages. So the curriculum should be age appropriate and stage appropriate. And another thing what is important is the theoretical basis of the human organization. That is also an important part when we look at the curriculum. So every organization has some theoretical basis or some kind of assumptions that is coming under the curriculum. So what is important here, we can see that the basis of curriculum is an important aspect. In this context, we can state that as the title is related to the codes of adult education, in the contextualization of adult education, what type of curriculum should be selected? Let me look at the adult education. We can see that the learner's age, we cannot confine it to the schooling system or the formal schooling system. We cannot confine it, formal setup, because many of them are continuing the education based on their needs. The needs may be different. Their desires may be different. So we cannot select this age-wise or a formalization of the curriculum. Then we can see that the adult learners, they are coming for different purposes. Sometimes for promotion, sometimes they want some kind of enhancement of knowledge, or nowadays we are giving importance for the skill development. So the skill development has become an important part of the learner's achievement. So here when we think of this curriculum transaction, how do we transact? As I stated earlier in the beginning that even the best curriculum will not be a success if it is not transacted in a proper way. So for the transaction, a better teaching learning process is always important. How do we transact? So for this transaction, first thing what we can say that the communication is an important part if you want to transact the curriculum. Let me think of the communication aspect. There comes two important parts of communication. That is the verbal communication and the non-verbal communication. Regarding the verbal communication, we know that there are important things that the listening is an important thing. Whether it is verbal or non-verbal, The important part of the communication style is listening. What type of listening skills that a learner should have, or a teacher who is teaching the adult learner should have? That is, listen properly, and then listen not only to the words but also to the body language. The next thing what we can think is that a proper eye contact is important. We may pretend that we are listening, but our focus is upon many other things. In this context, we have to focus upon a proper eye contact so that the learner will come to know that they are properly heard by the teacher. So this eye contact is an important part. Then the watching signals, what type of signals they are giving, that is an important part in curriculum transaction. So this listening we can see that we are using different kinds of elements when we try to listen to the learners. Coming to the non-verbal communication, there one has to focus upon the posture, then the body structure, that mainly the posters, and then the eye contact and how they are communicating. Suppose the poster, we can see that the eyebrow may be frowning eyebrow. What does it show? It shows that there is some kind of doubt in the communication style. So this frowning eyebrow will show like that. And then we can see that how the eye contact is going on, so that whether the listening is properly happening or in some other way. So this communication is an important part while we are transacting a curriculum in classroom. As I have stated that the curriculum is framed on different approaches, the thematic or the multidisciplinary or integrated approaches. How do we include this in the curriculum? So for this purpose, when we transact, we have to use different kinds of learning experiences. In these learning experiences, we have to concentrate upon the two things, that is the teacher experiences, teacher activities, as well as the student activities. In this case, we can see that the teacher activities, it should not be teacher-centered. There should have the active engagement of the learners. So what is important? The engagement of the learners is an important part when we frame any learning experiences. Now coming to the student activities. Just listening will create boring in the classroom, so that different types of engagement of the learners is an important part. We can engage the learners through different role play and this brainstorming. So different ways we can engage the learners. So this type of activities are very much important when we frame any learning experiences. So this curriculum transaction, it will become effective when we frame a good curriculum based on the different bases of the needs of the learner, the needs of the society, the philosophy and the theoretical background. And we can see that how the communication is integrated while we are transacting the curriculum. So here in the verbal communication, the tone also plays an important part. Whether the teacher is using modulation, voice modulation, and the pitch and everything is much important when we transact a curriculum. Coming to this curriculum transaction, we have discussed about the development, the curriculum transaction for that basis, and how the communication is integrated in this curriculum transaction. So the transaction process is taking place between the teacher and the student, student and students, or we can tell that the peer interaction is an important part. So the transaction, it may happen between the teacher and student and teacher and a group of students. And inside the group and group, we can see the transaction is happening. Among the peer group, the transaction is happening. When we look at the ODL system, we can see that the transaction is always happening between the learner and the self-learning material. That's why we stated that the teacher is inbuilt in the self-learning material. So we can see that how do we transact? How do we salute the learners? Are we giving any interest to the learners? That is an important part when we transact the curriculum. So different types, the student-centered will be the better one when we try to transact to the learners. While we are giving activities, we have discussed about the learning experiences that we frame and that we provide, and after that we will go for the evaluation. And for this evaluation part also, what is important is that there is student-centered evaluation. The peer group can evaluate, the teacher can evaluate, the whole class can evaluate some aspect. Then what is coming is that how do we give feedback to the learners? Feedback is an essential element when we do any kind of activity. When we look at the feedback, we can see that there are different types of feedback. That is the positive feedback, the negative feedback, the mixed feedback. So when we look at this positive feedback, how do we give this type of feedback? Suppose a learner has made a good idea. So the teacher may appreciate the learner, that's a good idea. So you can think more over it. So this is a kind of the positive feedback. Then the negative feedback, the teacher may state that even now at this stage, you cannot think properly. So this kind gives some kind of negative feedback. When we look at the mixed feedback, what we can see is that in the mixed feedback, the beginning, suppose the teacher stated that the idea is good, but the way of presenting is not up to the mark. So we can see the positive and the negative. And what is important is that the feedback should be given in a positive manner as well as in a constructive manner, so that the learners can improve their way of presenting, their way of style. How do they interact and how do they learn? So in curriculum transaction, when we think of it, it includes a lot of things, not only the development of curriculum, as I stated, the planning, organizing, the guiding, controlling, and then the transacting. So what does this control involves is that how the teacher is conveying the curriculum to the learner, and what are in the controlling system, how much is it effective, how much activities are useful. That all things are very much important when we think of this curriculum transaction. So let us see that how this curriculum transaction is happening in an adult learning setup. It doesn't mean that the transaction should be in a verbal manner. It can be in a non-verbal manner, that a look of the teacher may give different types of signs and meaning to the class, whether they have to keep silent or in an appreciating way, the nodding of the head, that also gives different kinds of meaning, that whether it is in a appreciating manner or in a negative manner. Now we can see that this type of things is going on in an adult learning setup. There, in the ODL context, when we think of the curriculum transaction, there includes different kinds of internship, where we can see that the learner is going to transact with the society. So what are the philosophy of the nation, the needs of the society, the local needs and everything is very much important. So based on that, the transaction is taking place. So during that internship, they are going to the society and collect whatever necessary things they want. So the interacting with the society gives the learner a kind of understanding. For example, in an adult education, what is important that they have to learn how to set up an NGO, non-governmental organization. So what all things is important is that the theoretical knowledge of starting an NGO is important, and more than that, how to run an NGO. So they have to get an experience for that. They are going to the field, they are interacting, and then they will get an idea, and coming back after getting the degree, they are able to implement whatever they have learned. So curriculum transaction is an important part in any, not only in teaching learning process. So whether it is a face-to-face or a ODL mode, curriculum transaction takes place an important part. And in the face-to-face mode, we don't think that the verbal transaction alone will help. Different types of activities. Through programs, we can adopt different kinds of activities to the learner, so that the learner may get different types of experiences. For example, for understanding the Indian culture, we don't have to give the verbal explanation. What is important is that they can do different types of activities and come out to know about the different cultures that is followed in a country like India. So there are different types of states, the different types of cultures. So what we have learned today is that the curriculum transaction, where it consists of two terms, curriculum and transaction, and how it to be transacted. The transaction basis of the curriculum transaction, the development of the curriculum, like the philosophy, the local needs, the contextualization, the theoretical or the assumptions of human organization, all these things are important and age appropriate. The developmentally appropriate curriculum should be developed. Then we have discussed about the different steps in the curriculum transaction so that a good step can be framed, and we know that different kinds of approval are also needed. So in different institutions, different types of process may be there in the planning stage. Based on this, the curriculum can be developed, and then the curriculum can be transacted in a different way where we can take the participation of the learner, whether it is in the face-to-face mode or in the ODL mode. We can give different types of activities to the learner. So in short, whatever we have discussed is that the feedback is not the least. How to give the feedback to the learners is an important part. Hence, I hope that all of you understand about the curriculum transaction and how the curriculum development alone will not help, where the management of curriculum or the curriculum transaction is an important part in any teaching learning process. Thank you.